Well, we're looking at a number of issues this morning. That report we played to you, bringing you the events of yesterday, where the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, detailed his experience on what happened and how he himself and, you know, some other people on his, his convoy now were denied, or his contingent were denied Canadian visas. And you also heard the response of the National Security Advisor there. Well, you can make of it what you will. Let us know what you think. Use the feedback handles that we have sent to you. But that is not the thrust of our conversation this morning. This morning, we have the pleasure of hosting the Minister of Interior, Mr. Olubunmi, or shall I say, Dr. Olubunmi Tunjuju, who is the Minister of Interior. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. Happy Valentine's Day to you, may I say. You're almost wearing red. It's not quite red. It's a shade of red. And they always say something about how women know colors. We'll say this is burgundy, something along the lines, but we'll take it. So happy Valentine's Day to you.
Thank you.
Anyways, so quite a number of things. I do not know if you want to add a comment or two to what to the to events that transpired yesterday, you listening and hearing that someone in the rank of the Chief of Defense Staff was denied a visa by an embassy here in Nigeria.
Well, I think as much as I wouldn't want to say too much, but I think the NSA has spoken about it and well captured. And I think it speaks to issue of reciprocity of respect, between nations, because somebody who is the Chief of Defense Staff, that's the highest military personnel, in the country, and it's unexpected. It's I would say it's condemnable, and without knowing the full facts. But I think even for us, in terms of visa policy, it means that issue of reciprocity, as I always say, has to be given due consideration, because when as much as we're not ready to dabble into the sovereignty or sovereign issues of other nations, issue of visas, issue of migration management is it's a sovereign issue. It borders on sovereignty and right of every nation. But as much as we don't want to dabble into that, but we think that it's not disrespect to the Chief of Defense Staff. To me, it's without knowing the facts, it's disrespectful to the country, and it's disrespectful to us as a people. If that can happen to the Chief of Defense Staff, then I'm worried. For an average Nigerian. I
mean, Honourable Minister, I know that there isn't enough. There aren't enough details as to why that was done in the first place. But I did go to the Canadian Embassy, their website, to see if there had been some kind of upgrade, because sometimes these things happen when there's an upgrade on their visa policy, and there was an upgrade, and that upgrade was on February the 12th, and that upgrade actually affects a lot of people. If there's a change in a person's status or circumstances, makes them inadmissible. And if an officer, that's the person in the embassy, is not satisfied that the person can leave Canada by the end of the authorized period, and the document, or if the document is lost or stolen. So they had actually just upgraded.
No, but excuse me.
Some of their policies.
I'm so sorry to interject. Don't let us mix words. We're talking about the Chief of Defense Staff. We're talking about a man who is the highest ranked, highest placed military person in Nigeria. That is not just a person. As much as I said, I believe there will be back-channel diplomatic solutions to this, but we have to say this, and we have to condemn it. My worry, it's not just about the Chief of Defense Staff. My worry is if this, because you will not tell me the Chief of Defense Staff is going to abscond, or the Chief of Defense Staff cannot, because his bills will even be paid by government. So to me, I don't see any rationale. And even if there are questions that you need to ask, there are back-channel diplomatic ways, protocol-wise, of solving these issues. My worry is not about him. As you can see, I don't think he's bothered. But I, as a Minister of Interior, in charge of migration management, in charge of immigration, who handles the issue of visa issuance and, of course, entry permits and etc., gets bothered that, hey, are we being taken for granted here? So that's the discussion. The discussion is to the average Nigerian, to that hard-working family who just wants a holiday, to that businessman who wants to go to Canada to explore business opportunities legitimately, to that Nigerian who all he needs is education, who can afford it. So my worry is about that average Nigerian, not just about the chief of defense staff. Is an individual, yes. But if this can happen to him, then there's a cause for concern.
It's very important that point is made.
I sincerely believe that, knowing the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I know my colleague, Ambassador Tuga, will be on top of this.
I want to be able to, sorry about that, I want to be able to get your thoughts, because one of the criticisms that we've heard from that particular event was that the language that was used by the NSA, many people online and in many fora, they've said it wasn't very complimentary, that phrase, "go to hell."
Well, I think we should not, I think we should talk more of the action rather than the reaction. And that's my sincere opinion. You know, it's basic Newton's law in physics, action and reaction. But as much as I don't want to, as I sit here, I don't have the full details. But what I believe is that, let's assume there are areas that needed clarification. There are diplomatic back channels, because we are talking about to me, this is the head of the Nigerian military, for crying out loud.
And I think that point has been made, Honorable Minister, because I also see here on the front page of Daily Trust that the embassy is saying that they'll state their position. So we'll wait and see just what the position is and what precisely, you know, could have led to what many Nigerians have regarded as an...
No, but for me, as much as I agree with that, and I don't want to really stretch this, my position is that if there is mutual respect...
Yeah, that shouldn't...
Exactly, there are back channels. You are talking about a chief of defense staff. You can reach out to the office or to foreign affairs. The foreign affairs interfaces on behalf of Nigeria with all embassies and consulates.
And in some instances, by now, the foreign minister would have been summoning the Canadian ambassador to find out what precisely
I'm pretty sure, knowing the Minister of Foreign Affairs for who he is, I'm sure a lot of work will be going on the back channel. And most diplomatic activities are not on the pages of newspaper.
Absolutely.
Most of them are via back channel. And I'm sure that the meetings are going on. And I want to know, because I know the Canadian government has always been very responsive to Nigerians, you know. So this coming, maybe because, as you said, change of the policy, but whatever it is, the status of the CDS has not changed. He's not a former CDS. He is the president. So nothing has changed. But I believe, as a country, the Minister of Foreign Affairs will take that diplomatic channel and resolve all these issues in the interest of Nigeria. But I'm happy that at least we have an opportunity to talk about this. And on the back channel, it's not just going to be, oh, let's issue, but to the average Nigerian, let us be treated with respect.
Well, you are looking at a number of things for the average Nigerian in your own ministry, and quite well, I say something significant was approved by the Federal Executive Council beginning of this week. A new paramilitary academy, we understand. What precisely is that about?
Yeah, thank you. It's not just a new. It's like the first, you know, that's a degree awarding institution. Because we realize that in terms of national security architecture, we have the police, we have the paramilitary, then we have the military. And we realize that the level of output is dependent on the training that you have. And we saw that paramilitary jobs were more becoming more or less like an empowerment program. You know, when people go to school, they graduate, they look for a job, they just take civil defense. But that's not the whole idea
like a poverty alleviation program.
So, but that is not the idea within the security architecture. When you see the police has a police university in Woodhill. You graduate, you go straight into the police force, you become, you know, an officer of the police. The military, they have their defense academy, where it's a degree awarded students. The young Nigerians, energetic Nigerians, we can catch them young and mold them to find officers that will be able to serve the country. And that is why when you look at the level of discipline, we do respect in the military. it's quite different from the level of discipline that you have, with due respect, in the paramilitary. Because we employ graduates. We do not mold graduates. So we want a scenario whereby Nigerians, once you leave secondary school, you write your JAMB, you will be able to enter the school. It's a degree-awarding institution. Then you have 4 years, 5 years of training you, of molding. It's called catch them young. We catch them young, we mold them to fine officers of paramilitary. What is the responsibility of paramilitary from the name? The paramilitary is supposed to consolidate the military. And you cannot consolidate when you are not on the same wavelength. You cannot consolidate when you are not on the same track, when your visions are not aligned. Do not forget that the national security strategy is one. Every other agency needs to plug in. But in a scenario whereby you employ 20-something, 30-something, yeah, even in the military, there's direct shortcuts, but that is for a few. But we know that there is, you go to NDA as a 16, as a 17 or 18-year-old. You go through, you earn your degree, then you become a fine officer. It means that from your secondary school, the only thing that you know is the military life. And that's what we want for our paramilitary. So that we will be able to provide fine officers, and at the end of the day, we will not just mold them in terms of skills, we will not just mold them, but even in terms of character. I'll give you an example. A lot of officers today that we recruit, even most of the officers in service in Nigerian Correctional Service, for example, do not even understand what it takes to be a correctional officer. Let's call it a spade. Because if you are going and towing the line of correctional service from the academy, psychology has to be, you have to be trained on psychology. Because your responsibility is to correct. Your responsibility is to be a transformative agent. Your responsibility is to be an agent of rehabilitation and reformation. So you develop this from a young age, you grow into the system, and once you graduate from that, you will go either as a civil defense officer, either as a correctional service officer, immigration officer, fire service, or whatever.
It's a good thing that you just mentioned the agencies that you're hoping to feed with this paramilitary institution. First, I have a number of questions, but I want to quickly know, from approval now to implementation, how quickly do you see this materializing?
In the first place, the president is very keen on this because it's about building structure. It's about building a lasting system. It's about building legacy. Because what we inherited, with due respect, was, a room that fits all. But that is not the idea of security.
It brings to my mind, when it comes to the NSCDC, because that's one of the agencies that you just mentioned right now. So what was feeding them before? Was it just an all-comers affair?
Yeah, because the way it was before was a recruitment process, just like the civil service recruitment process, where we do adverts in the papers, graduates will apply, and when they apply, or depending on categories, we'll screen them, they do written exam, we pick them, they do maybe a couple of months training, they go and join. And those are people by law that are supposed to be the protector of critical national asset of government. So in case you do not know, your pipeline is a critical asset of government. The schools are critical assets of government. Electricity. So for somebody, that alone dovetails into counter-terrorism responsibilities.
So, Honorable Minister, as I said, fine idea. From approval to implementation.
No, the FEC, the last FEC has directed the Attorney General to come up with an executive bill. Just as you know, the renewed hope government, with due respect, is not built on lawlessness. It's built on rule of law. And for you to have an institution like that, there must be, it's beyond what the executive will just do. So it has to have a legal instrument, a legal backing. And that will be drafted by the Attorney General. From there, it goes to the National Assembly. We know that it's an executive bill. And of course, we all understand that in view of our internal security pressure at the moment, is what is actually needed. So we know that our colleagues in the National Assembly will do the needful, and once that is signed into law, we see that within the next 1 year, by the grace of God, we should be able to...
So you're looking at 1 year for the passage of the bill?
No. I mean for it from end to end, for us to be able to put all necessary structure on ground in terms of passage of the bill, the assent, curriculum development, because we want to
the structure.
The structure, because to me, we have to take our time to plan it well. It's a legacy, and like what I also say, if you look at the security architecture today, you will see how stretched our military is, with due respect, because there are a lot of responsibilities today that the military is carrying that should be carried by paramilitary. And that's the truth. The military is for, in case of external aggression, and of course, but when you look at it today, for instance, when there is a riot, I'm just giving an example, the military, when you look at pipeline protection, you see the military, when you see our mast, our solidarity, so the military is stretched. So we just think it is time, and that's what the president just thought in his wisdom, that let's have this legacy. Let us build a system that will be able to free the military a bit of internal security responsibilities. Once the military is freed of that, then the military will be able to perform maximally their core responsibility, while the internal security architecture will be handled by agencies of internal security agencies such as NSCDC, immigration, police, and all the rest.
I mean, it's interesting that you brought up the jobs for some of the. I remember when you became minister, and I actually followed you. We went to see all of the places that have, because you were so gung-ho on the mandate that was given to your ministry by the president. Now, I want to bring up one area, and it's in tying with some of the work that your ministry has to do with security, internal security in the country. Let's talk electricity. You talked about right now the protection of critical national assets.
Yeah.
Now, we've been talking about electricity for a very long time, and of course, the Minister of Power has been explaining that, look, it's vandalism. It's a lot of vandalism. And we see, at least for the AEDC in Abuja, almost every day, somebody has vandalized something somewhere, and because of that vandalism, there's no light in so and so area. It's almost daily that we get these, and we appreciate them for speaking to us, at least in many places, like we're told, they don't even speak to the people at all. But I want to be able to talk about this recurring vandalism. How is your ministry positioning itself to handle the recurring vandalism of power assets in our country?
Well, I think it's part of what I think you asked the question, and you've also answered the question, and I will tell you how. In the first place, let's get this straight. These are the things, it's about the appropriate structure. You see, you can't prefer short-term solutions to long-term problems. And also, you can't prefer long-term solutions to short-term problems. You must prefer solutions that are commensurate with the problems. We did a small pilot of what we can do with the mine marshals. We had this issue, and if you will, you're in the media, you can confirm this, that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, issue of mining issue, was a real security, was a mess, was a problem. There were mines in Zamfara, and yes, we're not yet there. But last year, myself and the Minister of Solid Minerals, Dr. Dele Alaki, we came together. And we created an arm of the civil defense called the mine marshals. Strictly, we trained them on issues because every sector is unique. What you need to protect the power sector is not what you need to protect the mining sector. It's not what you need to protect the oil and gas sector, because the threats are different. You do what you call threat assessment. When you do your threat assessment, it is the result of your threat assessment that will give you the security strategy to it. And we train them, and today, you can see that even in the last data, the revenue from solid minerals has increased. Insecurity has reduced. It shows that there's impact. That has worked. So we have decided now, with Minister of Power, to have what we call the Power Rangers, to be able to have specific officers of the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps. Because what we had before we came was a generalization of national assets, the protection of critical national. But when we came on board, we saw that no, you cannot have one particular medication that suits all illnesses. You can't do that. So you have to analyze every sector, the water sector, the power sector, the educational sector, the health sector. You have to analyze all this and be able to create arms of civil defense under the same umbrella.
Power Rangers.
Yes.
So let me ask the same question Malkwe asked. From start? When are we expecting them? What's the timeline?
No, we've already agreed on the modus operandi.
Okay.
And as I speak to you, the offices are being screened, picked. Because what we did with the solid mineral, don't forget that we are going to have all these officers in all the 36 states plus FCT, because there's no state without a power infrastructure. It's just like the solid mineral. So you can't have a central body just in Abuja and expect that they will be able to respond to something that happens in Maiduguri. So we are already on the process of onboarding those officers, because we have to profile them, look at their capacity, look at their competence, look at their area of specialization, look at a lot of considerations, even physical strength and a lot of things. So once we analyze all this, is what we are doing at the moment, then we will now train them. You know, I wouldn't go too deep into the level of training that we give them. We now train them in terms of even threat assessment, because a good security apparatus, a good security architecture is not a security architecture that is curative in nature. It's a security architecture that is detective and preventive in nature. Once it happens, security has failed. Once that disaster occurs, security has been breached. So a security architecture in America, they will tell you they receive millions of threats almost every day. But America will not talk about the millions that were nipped in the bud. The people will only talk about the one that succeeds. That is security. And that's why security is not a 99% performance-driven industry. Security is a 100% performance-driven industry, because a single 0.1% lag can cause crisis. So we are going to train them in issue of threat assessment, and a lot of other issues. Then from there, they will be, because that's what we did with solid minerals. They are not under my control. They are my officers. They are officers of my ministry, but they are under the control of solid minerals. So that there is no bureaucracy. The Minister of Solid Minerals needs to give instruction. Oh, there is a threat here or whatever, and he needs to call Minister of Interior. There is no, you see, the beauty, with due respect, without sounding patronizing of the renewed hope agenda, the beauty is collaboration, knowing that it's nation building. It's a joint task. So for the Power Rangers, they're not going to be under my command. They're going to be under the Ministry of Power. But they are civil defense officers. So Ministry of Power will be able to, because they know their infrastructure more than I do. So once we train them, we send them there, then of course they get their salaries from here, but the key response, and it's the same thing when we move to petroleum sector. We hope to be able to move to petroleum sector after the power sector. Once we move there, then they will also, once we create that special team, they will be under the command of the petroleum industry, so that every sector you will not have specialists. We don't want to have jack of all trades, master of none.
It's a good thing you just mentioned the petroleum sector, because I also know that the fire service is under your ministry, and you know, in recent times we have been recording some tanker fires along our roads, and it's been really, really disturbing. I do not know, you know, if your ministry has also, you know, raised concern, because while we're trying to keep our people safe internally, it does appear that we're losing significant number of lives owing to, you know, safety issues, things that could have been prevented, perhaps with education, perhaps with prevention, if the fire service were on the ground. What exactly is the relationship between the federal fire service and the fire service and state governments?
Okay, let me tell you. I'll tell you that the biggest problem of this government, with due respect, and I'm not sounding I don't want to be uncharitable here, is that we inherited too many things to be done at the same time. But it's not an excuse. We asked, as the president will always say, he asked for the job, so no room for complaints. It will interest you that the Fire Service Act is a major problem of the industry. And when your act, because what gives birth to you is the law. If the law is faulty, then your performance can never work. Because your performance is a function of the mandate given by the law.
What's the problem with the act?
The problem is that the Fire Service Act is Fire Service Act of 1963. As I speak to you, we've already sent a bill. We're working hard in the National Assembly to amend that. The law, everywhere in the world, the fire service is a rescue service. Let's understand that. It's called Fire and Rescue Service all over the world. If you go to the UK, you go to the US, you go to Japan, anywhere in the world, EMS, even emergency medical service, is manned by the fire service. Fire service is supposed to be the first responder in any emergency situation, beyond even fire. Even if there is flood, if there is anything, it's the fire service that. So it's a massive responsibility. It's supposed to be the national, emergency response. NEMA manages emergency, but response is fire service all over the world. But we have a law in 1963 that was not the mindset. That's number one. Number two, you have anywhere in the world, the fire service is supposed to be an enumerator. It's supposed to be an implementer, and it's also supposed to be a monitor of rescue and emergency services. For instance, you build a house. What are the considerations for emergencies and co? It's all over the world.
Yeah.
Safety. It should be fire service. The law does not give them that power.
Yeah, but they're carrying it out, right?
No, but they are carrying in an advisory position, not in an enforcement position. You can't enforce a law, a power you don't have. You can't.
So if you don't keep to the fire code, they can't stop you from building.
You can't, exactly. So that is a problem. For example, public centers. I will give you an example.
Market.
You go to markets, you go to churches, you go to mosques, you go to different places. That is a place, or is a public place. Public safety is paramount. There is a limitation to what the fire service can do to enforce these things. That's that. Then thirdly, I'll give you, as I said earlier, security is about being proactive. It's about proactiveness. It's not about being reactive. Security is like football. A good goalkeeper, what distinguishes a good goalkeeper from a great goalkeeper is that a good goalkeeper knows how to dive to touch the ball. A great goalkeeper knows positioning. Less effort, he positions himself, he catches the ball. That is like security. So security is a proactive industry. Now, I'll give you an example. Every fire, you look at Balogun Market, for example, how big Balogun Market is. It's becoming like an annual ritual or recurring decimal for fire incidents every year. We all know during Harmattan. Now, fire starts little. It is not that this fire cannot be curtailed at that early stage. But the question is this: can government provide enough boots on ground to protect all critical infrastructures for fire and rescue services? The answer is a no. And that is why you see even in the US, you see in the UK, all over the world, industrialized countries. What is it that government does?
You know, recently...
Government brings, just let me land on this point. What government now has the right to train private sector, license private sector for participation to be first-line responders before help comes. I'll give you an example. Most people that have fire extinguishers in their hotels, even in their homes, see it as just a piece of furniture. They don't know how to use it. So these are issues.
So these are the issues, but I want to know where I think the issue for me.
With the law,
I was going to say, are you saying that the law is what has been preventing them from being more proactive?
No, definitely.
And saving more lives than they ought to, or is it a lack of equipment, a lack of funding? Precisely, is that what you're saying?
Let me tell you, the most important thing in life, this is democracy. Democracy is built on the premise of the rule of law.
So the law has been preventing.
If the law is faulty, if the law says today a man is a woman, that when a man goes to a bank, I
wish you would use another example. I wish you would use another example.
What I'm saying is that the law, you are who the law says you are. That's what I'm saying.
Indeed.
And you are what the law says you are. So for me, it is important for us to build a legal structure. Because once the law is worked on, believe me, you'll be creating a permanent solution to this. Then you will not be able to call for accountability. But when the mandate is not there,
the time
it's
is
difficult.
Flying. the time is flying. Now we still have so many things that we need to discuss with you about. I want to be able to go to prisons now. Let's talk about, because this is recent.
Correctional service.
Correctional, yes. Yeah. Because I saw that you have done that change. Yes, it's no more the prison service. It's not a place for punishment. It's a place for correction. You said that recently when you got that visit from the from Vaughan.
Yes.
So listening to you say that, and then we stay talking about, okay, so the prisons, what do they need? And I saw that you said there's an approval for 50 doctors and 100 nurses to take care of inmates. Could you expatiate on that? And is that number enough? I've been to Kuje with you before, and we saw that there are a lot of people that are sick in the hospital. And you talked about the feeding and everything at that time. Let's talk about that healthcare. I've been to that dispensary in Kuje. Okay. There's nothing in there.
No, I wish you can go now, and I challenge you.
Okay.
Please go to the hospital in Kuje. Do a video. If it's
they won't let me leave off.
No, I will. Just go to the hospital. Okay. I will. If the standard is below what is expected, please call me out.
Okay.
We have changed that.
Okay.
You see, all we decided to do is not to concentrate on what we inherited. Because we were not, I personally as Minister of Interior, I was not appointed by the President to make excuses. I was appointed to prefer solutions in line with his dreams for Nigeria. Now, about corrections, that's part of what I was saying earlier. What is the difference between a prison and a correctional center? A prison is a place of incarceration. A prison is a place for punishment for an offense. A correctional center is a place for reformation, a place for transformation, a place for rehabilitation, a place of hope. And I am happy that we did the memo to the President and that we had issues, medical issues, because you can't put, for instance, I'll give you an example. A couple of months ago, in the whole of Rivers State, we didn't have a single doctor in terms of our correctionals. And I'm not proud to say this, but we went to the President with a memo and said, that, Mr. President, this is the challenge. And immediately he signed right there and gave the instruction. Number one, what did we do? Our retiring officers, the lot of officers, 60 years old, 60 years is the retirement age by virtue of public service rule. Some of them are still energetic, some of them are still interested in working. The President approved for us to offer them to continue, for those that want to continue, which is on a yearly contract basis. So at least because they are not doing any hard work, they're just using their brain, they're doctors. People run private medical practice till 70. Let's call it spade a spade. They run till 65. So why are we going to retire everybody because they're 60 when we don't have replacements? And you keep people in a closed circle, in a closed environment, they're sick and there is no medical attention. The essence is to correct them, not to kill them. The essence is to take care of them because government will be held responsible if anything happens to these inmates because the court has sent them to the NCOS to keep in safe custody, not for you to go and malign, not for you to go and even decimate their being psychologically. So he approved that. That's number one. That has added a lot to our workforce. Number two, he also approved that, okay, based on our needs assessment, because you can't go and ask for what you don't need. He approved for us to urgently recruit 50 doctors and 100 nurses with immediate effect, which is presently ongoing. It's captured in the budget. And the third one, which is a short-term solution, is for us to be able, for NYSC, to send medical doctors to correctional service, because there is nothing more about national service than those that take care of the weak. Because somebody in a correctional center is already a weak person, because you've taken the freedom of movement, which is a key factor in terms of what makes you who you are. So in providing solutions to the medical needs of our people in terms of personnel, because the medical issues, the medical issue is broken into two.
Oh, yeah.
One, it's about the personnel, and two, the facility.
Yes.
Because if you have the right doctor, you don't have the right drugs or equipment, it's a different ballgame. So in terms of the personnel, he gave two short-term solutions. Those officers that have retired on 1 year, let's keep them as retainership, which is novel. Number two is the NYSC. Then the long-term solution is the recruitment. And as we see that there is need for more officers, that we need more, then we'll write back to him, and I'm sure he will. Then in terms of facilities, we have started in 1 or 2 places, like I told you about Kuje. with their machines. It's not just about.
I mean, I'm looking for stuff because I want to be able to bring that up.
I will take you. I give you my word. I'll take you.
No problem. I'm holding you to that word.
For you to see what. And also,
I want to be able to. Because we just have a few minutes.
Yeah.
We heard the Minister of Communication. Well, one of the briefings are about to continue. I think the
Minister of Information.
The Minister of Information said the briefings are about to continue, where you give your scorecard, and the President has said ministers should give their scorecard. I want to give you a few minutes to tell us why. If there was a reshuffling, we don't know if that's going to happen. Last time I heard the President talk about it, he said it wasn't going to happen. But let's say the President decides to reshuffle his cabinet. Why should you remain in that cabinet? In just a few minutes, I think it's an opportunity to highlight maybe some of the things that you've done.
Well, as much as I wouldn't like to blow my trumpet, and for me, it's not about me, For me, it's about implementing the renewed hope agenda, bringing hope to the people with respect to my mandate, And I think that we've been able, God has helped us to be able to contribute that. And I'm happy today that anybody that comes into the country from Lagos or Abuja, as we speak, the era of wait till you bring come by some officers is gone, because like what I always say, the easiest way of killing corruption is to reduce human contact. Once you remove human contact, you're good. And all you do now is put your passport scan, the e-gate records you, you go, nobody stamps your passport anymore. We've joined that league, and that has been, and I'm happy that, and of course, the APs that we deployed, even Interpol confirmed, a lot of people on Interpol wanted list, criminals have been apprehended at our borders now between December and now, just because we put the infrastructure, in place. And also, we promised on PoliticsToday, we promised the contactless passport solution. And I'm happy that in November we started in Canada. Last week, Friday, precisely a week ago, we started in UK and in Europe. And as of today, we have done over 1,000 people in UK and Europe alone. Yeah,
you did say you're going to start on the 7th of February in the UK.
Yeah, we did.
We started on the 7th of February.
That was last week. Yes, that was 7th. Last week, Friday. Yes, we did. And we'll be starting 7th of March in Africa, inclusive of Nigeria and Asia, because in line with project management principle, you can't start everything at the same time. We started with Canada, used that to test the solution, because the solution was 100% built by Nigerians. It's an indigenous solution, all right? So, because we sincerely believe that we need to also give opportunities for Nigerians to excel. And I tell you that Canada is stable. Now we've moved to Europe, and just yesterday I was told over 100 envelopes were sent, because self-addressed envelope, because once we print, you send us your self-addressed envelope to your address, we put it in and send it back to you. Yesterday alone, over 100.
Contactless system for the issuance of passports.
For the renewal.
For the renewal, yes, okay. If you're issuing for the very first time, people still have to go to the...
Because the way the technology works is that, which was what motivated this, because we're actually one of the first to really deploy that, and the reason is simple. When I became Minister of Interior, and the President gave me a machine order. The issue of passport was a mess, all over. People have to wait for months and all these things. And we thought that what's the actual problem? The number of passports that we issue, over 70% are renewals. So if you cure the problem of renewals, automatically you remove the bottleneck. And we saw that people were increasing fees, a lot of corruption because of human contact. So we just thought that, okay, why do people need to go to immigration office? For instance, when you need to renew your passport, you live here, you go to Gwagwalada or whatever. What do you go and do there? Just biometric. And meanwhile, the biometric you are taking is not being used for the issuance of your passport. It's just for the purpose of authentication and verification of what we have in the database. The question is this is 2025, not 1985. Why do you need to leave the comfort of your home to authenticate who you are? So we came up with the idea of the contactless biometric to deploy the solution. So once there are different checks, liveness check, there's a biometric fingerprint, and of course the eye. So once you do that, it confirms that you are who you say you are. then we print your passport and courier it to you.
Yeah, so that's working in Nigeria now?
No, we've not started that in Nigeria.
And so people still have to go to the the immigration office?
In Nigeria, it will start on the 7th of March, I guess, yes, 7th of March. Because we started with Canada, that was November 1st. So we tried, of course, there were hitches here and there, which is normal with anything.
How do we intend to send it to the people in Nigeria? Are we going to be working with night post?
No, definitely it's going to be via courier, because the whole thing is that if you look at in the US, you don't go to immigration office, or in the UK, you don't go to home office to go and get your passport, you go to post office and whatever. And the reason is not just for the purpose of convenience, it's also for the purpose of national security. Because the passport does not belong to you. The passport carries your details, but it's the property of the Nigerian government. So government should be able to trace its property to a particular address at any point in time. Because you see a lot of people having different fictitious addresses.
Honorable, Minister, I asked that because we know that in these places where you have also mentioned, their delivery systems, their courier system works, their national courier system works. Yeah. So I'm asking, are we going to be using our own national courier system? Or we're going to be using that of the private sector?
No, of course, we will be using a private sector-driven courier system.
That's what I wanted to
Because what is important for us, it's based on, because we inherited, when I came, there was agreement, that we inherited. All we had to do is to say, hey, listen, the agreement, you are to be delivering unprocessed passports. We said, no, we are centralizing our personalization. And once we centralize our personalization, then the ease of delivery becomes the problem. And we believe that in activating that particular clause of the agreement, then we will be able to solve that problem.
So let me ask you about e-borders, which is another issue that has come up. You have said that, there's been some misconceptions around e-border, that you've only activated the first phase 1 of it, which covers about 40 kilometers, which is really, really small.
Yeah, this is 40 kilometers.
How much does it cover in the first phase?
I can't recollect. What I said is that it covers about 60% of our border space. And our border is 4,047 kilometers, if I'm not wrong. So 60% of that should be in the range, that should be about 2,000, that should be about 2,400 and something kilometers. So never 40 kilometers. If it's 40 kilometers, I won't come on air and talk about it. What we said is that it's phase 1, all right? And we've completed the first phase, which is 60 kilometers. And of course, the 40 kilometers will be in the phase 2.
40 kilometers will be in the phase?
Sorry, the 40%.
40%
of our land border, terrestrial border space will be in phase 2. But 60%, which is about 2,400 and with some fractions kilometers, being captured in.
That includes the airports, is that correct? Or?
No.
You're talking about the general land border?
We're talking about land borders. Yes. At the level, our border solution at the airport is quite different. Our border solution includes the APIs, includes the e-gate, includes the MIDAS solution, and so many other solutions that we have, which I wouldn't want to go too deep into because there are security issues, right? But when you talk about the e-border, it's mainly for our terrestrial, because that's where we have most of the challenges, because of the peculiar nature of our border. Two peculiar problems. Problem number 1 is the fact that we have a lot of contagious communities, especially in Ogun, even in the north of Nigeria, in Adamawa, in a lot of places where you have, even Katsina, you have a community, that is just, between two countries, and that dates back to pre-colonial issues. Do not forget that some of these borders were determined not by Nigeria and its neighbors. These borders were determined by the colonial masters, you understand, especially the French and British, So these are some of the liabilities that we inherited. But I can tell you that the Boundary Commission, which is statutorily responsible for sorting out issues that has to do with borders, is actually working on that. That's number 1. Then number 2, and of course, it's difficult for you to bring physical infrastructure to demarcate them because these are families, like in places like Ogun, there are people that sleep sheep in Nigeria, but they farm in Benin Republic. Yes, it's true. I mean, so it's difficult for you because you're talking about ethnicity, you're talking about family, you're talking about things that people are very sensitive about. So as a responsible government, we cannot just come with brute force, and we have to manage that. And I know the Boundary Commission is working on that. Then the second reason why it is quite tough is also the fact that we are surrounded. We used to be surrounded. I mean, let me say we are surrounded by we have 4 countries that borders Nigeria terrestrially. Don't let us forget, we have Cameroon, we have Chad, we have Niger and Benin Republic. And of these, only 2 are ECOWAS, 2 are non-ECOWAS. Cameroon is not an ECOWAS country. Chad is not an ECOWAS country. And
now Nigeria has left.
Well, that is, I will not sit here to admit that, as an officer of government and as Minister of Interior, because a lot of ECOWAS is still working on that. So let's see.
They've since exited.
Well,
but let's not go there. If you don't want to go there, let's not go there. But
what I'm saying is that we have 2 countries that are non-ECOWAS, countries. And when you look at the problem, the people that borders Nigeria, especially from the southern part of Nigeria with Cameroon, they are English speaking. They are the Anglophone part of it. So it becomes an issue because there are issues between the Anglophone and the French speaking. So there are a lot of issues within the region that are quite a bit tough. So that makes, and also, why is border control a bit difficult in Nigeria? And this government has done a lot. We've done a lot. We've arrested a lot. For the first time, we are deporting people now in Nigeria. And I'll tell you why it's been a bit tough. It's because Nigeria is a country that falls within 2 regions. Don't let us forget that. It's like the challenge that Turkey has been part of Europe, part of Asia, So it's the same thing. When you look at Nigeria, we fall within the Sahel, we also fall within the Gulf of Guinea.
Yeah.
So we know that of the 10 poorest countries in the world, about 6 of them are in the Sahel. So Nigeria is in the Gulf of Guinea, and of the biggest, richest countries in Africa, a lot of them are in the Gulf of Guinea. So there is a migration from the Sahel to the Gulf of Guinea. So it's a major issue being at the window. We are like the door.
Yes.
We are like
just
the
2 minutes, Honorable Minister, but before you go, I want to be able to get you to talk about this year and what your plans are. If there was one, let's say 2 or 3, maybe let's make it 3. If there were 3 major things that your ministry is going to do for the Nigerian people in 2025, what would those 3 things be?
Number 1, enhancement of internal security, which is the core responsibility and protection of critical national assets. That's number 1. Number 2 is the law, the enactment, facilitation of the repeal and enactment of a Fire Service Act. That because there is no industrialized country that will not have a functional fire and rescue service. You can't be an industrialized country and there is fire issue or rescue issues and there's no response. So for us to be able to hit our target of $1 trillion, for us to bring investors into Nigeria, we need a functional, vibrant, professional fire and rescue service. That would be my number 2. And of course, my number 3 is citizenship integrity, which is the core responsibility of the Ministry of Interior.
Well, we certainly will be looking forward to that, and we hope to catch up with you later in the year, or certainly within the course of his administration. We have to thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for coming on the program this morning. We have been speaking with Dr. Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, who is the Minister of Interior. Once again, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Moped. Thank you for
Happy Valentine's Day once more.
Thank you.